with them and do all of this. But the universe has a way of working. And I've got to tell you a very wonderful story about Pandit Jasraj, who I wanted to learn from, but I didn't know him. And I went to a concert of his after that again. Somebody calls me up. This is a week or two after I'd had this incredible experience. And
You are watching the World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bava. Let's begin with the top headlines we're tracking currently. The Trump administration followed through on its threat to pull federal funding from Harvard University hours after the oldest and richest US college refused to agree to a list of government demands. One of the first executive orders that Donald Trump signed when he assumed office as US president was to declare a national emergency along the southern border of the US. That order had a rider to it that President Trump might invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807 and possibly deploy the military on US soil on the 20th of April. China's President Xi Jinping called for stronger ties with Vietnam on trade and supply chains amid disruptions caused by US tariffs as he attended the signing in Hanoi of dozens of cooperation agreements between the two communist-run nations. After visiting the Gurdwara with his wife, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has been accused of pandering to Sikhs on Baisakhi. From Texas to the stars and back again, well, 6 women boarded Blue Origin's New Shepard rocket, marking the first all-female flight since 1963. That flight saw cosmonaut Valentina Tereshkova orbit Earth 48 times on a solo mission lasting 3 days. This one saw Katy Perry, a journalist, and also Jeff Bezos' fiancé.
I got you, Flynn.
Gotcha. Proud of you.
The big headline we're tracking currently, the Trump administration followed through on its threat to pull federal funding from Harvard University hours after the oldest and richest US college refused to agree to a list of government demands. The government froze $2.2 billion of multi-year grants to Harvard, according to the Joint Task Force to combat anti-Semitism, following a defiant message from the school's president saying that it would not surrender its independence or its constitutional rights. The task force wrote, Harvard's statement reinforces the troubling entitlement mindset that is endemic in our nation's most prestigious universities and colleges, that federal investment does not come with the responsibility to uphold civil rights laws. But the Trump administration last month said it was scrutinizing as much as $9 billion in federal grants and contracts to Harvard as part of its efforts to combat anti-Semitism on US campuses. Moving on, one of the first executive orders that Donald Trump had signed when he assumed office as US president was to declare a national emergency along the southern border of the United States. That order had a rider to it that President Trump might invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807 and possibly deploy the military on US soil on the 20th of April, which is 90 days after the executive order was signed. The rider clause in President Trump's executive order on the 20th of January stated that within 90 days of the date of this proclamation, the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Homeland Security shall submit a joint report to the President about the conditions at the southern border of the US and any recommendations regarding additional actions that may be necessary to obtain complete operational control of the southern border, including whether to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807. In other news, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg took the stand in a US antitrust trial that could force the tech giant to split up, potentially reshaping the global social media landscape. Now, the government alleges that Meta amassed a monopoly by acquiring Instagram and WhatsApp, though the company argues it still faces plenty of competition from rivals. Meta has embarked on a recent lobbying blitz aimed at pushing US President Donald Trump to intervene and settle the suit. But some Trump officials have recently sought to stiffen the president's spine against Meta. Some analysts will tell you that the rush by Zuckerberg and other tech figures to buy their way into the new administration has not always proven effective. But Vishal has been tracking the finer developments for us. He joins us live at the moment. Vishal, so this case marks the first significant opportunity for Donald Trump's administration to follow through on the president's campaign promise to take on big tech?
Well, that is correct. It was during his first term that this case was filed, and it gained a lot of steam over the years, but it's been a while since any action has been taken. And this is the beginning of the biggest trial. This is the biggest antitrust trial in the history of any big tech company. So it has a lot of media gaze, a lot of interest in it. And Meta has gone on to say that these allegations are unfounded and they're sort of biased because they did not kill competition by buying these companies. In effect, they made the user experience, the consumer experience way better than it was before. So that is what the counter from the Meta company is. But FTC continues to say that it was a buy or bury tactic from Meta that enabled it to buy these companies in some inflated amount. These deals they went through about a decade ago. It was in 2012 that Instagram was bought by Meta, and in 2014 that WhatsApp was bought by Meta. Both really big time deals. Both these deals are in focus due to this trial, and Meta could be forced to sell Instagram, could be forced to divest a lot of these companies if the ruling goes through not in favor of Meta. So that will have to be seen, because we all know that both Instagram and WhatsApp, together with Meta, and Facebook, they control a majority of the social media market, even though Meta continues to say that it has competition in the market from YouTube, from other companies such as TikTok. But a lot of experts have said that it has a monopoly on the market, and that is what FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is looking to counter. It wants Meta to not have that kind of hold on the market. So that is what will be interesting to be seen.
Thanks so much, Vishal, as always, for taking us through the latest developments. Well, let's turn our attention now to Zelensky urging Donald Trump to visit Ukraine to see the devastation caused by Russia's invasion, while the US president appeared to play down Moscow's latest deadly attack, which is the worst on civilians this year, calling it a mistake. International leaders condemned Russia's strike on the center of the Ukrainian city of Sumy on Sunday, which killed 34 people, including children. 2 ballistic missiles hit as people made their way to church for Palm Sunday. Asked about Russia's attack on civilians, Trump said he was trying to get the war stopped. But for further clarity on the matter, joining us live from Washington, D.C. at the moment, Ray Locker. Ray, always a pleasure to have you on the show. How effective would you say Zelensky's approach has been to engaging skeptical Western leaders? Is appealing to their conscience enough, or is Ukraine losing ground in the battle for sustained international support?
Well, they're losing ground in terms of getting sustained U.S. support. I think other people around the world are rallying behind Ukraine, but it is a day in, day out battle of uncertainty with the Trump administration. You don't know who you're going to get any day with Donald Trump, as we've seen with the tariffs.
Ray, America's role, Trump has repeatedly claimed this would never have started if he was president. But would you say this is a fair statement, or would you argue that it's dangerous revisionism that downplays Putin's responsibility in this entire invasion?
Oh, I think it's dangerous revisionism that downplays Putin's responsibility. Absolutely. I mean, we don't know what would have happened if Trump had been president in 2022. I mean, I think the world would be a much worse place, as we're seeing now, when he's operating without any guardrails. The fact is, this was an aggressive act by Russia, attacking a country that had not done anything to warrant being attacked. And Trump is all over the map on this. He was going to end the war on his first day as president. Hasn't happened.
Right.
You know, he was going to push Zelensky this way, push Putin. We don't know what he's doing. And, you know, if I'm Vladimir Putin, I'm like, I'm going to do whatever I want to, because he's not going to stop me.
Right. Meanwhile, Russia accuses Ukraine of using civilians as human shields. This actually mirrors familiar Kremlin talking points. Do you agree that we're seeing a dangerous shift in how civilian deaths are now framed and accepted in modern warfare?
Well, I mean, it's Vladimir Putin. He's going to say whatever he wants. Are you a human shield if you're going to church on Palm Sunday?
Absolutely.
Who are you shielding, you know? I mean, you're just going about your daily life and you're callously murdered by a dictatorial regime, period. You know, Putin can say whatever he wants, but anybody who's watching it knows what's really happening.
Ray, it's always a pleasure to hear your views. Thank you so much for joining us. We will, of course, stay in touch with you for regular updates. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has claimed that Iran has been intentionally delaying a nuclear deal with the United States. He cautioned Tehran against a drive for a nuclear weapon, saying it may have to face a military strike if it didn't desist from its activities. Iran and the United States officials have met in Oman, as we covered, and held positive and constructive talks just last week on Saturday. A second round is scheduled for Saturday as well. Donald Trump said that Tehran must forego the concept of having a nuclear weapon. In fact, we have a reaction lined up for you. Listen in.
With them on Saturday. We have another meeting scheduled next Saturday. I said, that's a long time. You know, that's a long time. So I think they might be tapping us along. But Iran has to get rid of the concept of a nuclear weapon. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. He can't have a nuclear weapon. Nobody can have, we can't have anybody having nuclear weapons, you know? We can't have nuclear weapons. And I think they're tapping us along because we're so used to dealing with stupid people in this country. Only thing is, one thing, simple, it's really simple, they can't have a nuclear weapon. And they gotta go fast because they're fairly close to having one. And they're not gonna have one. And if we have to do something very harsh, we'll do it. And I'm not doing it for us, I'm doing it for the world. And these are radicalized people, and they cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Meanwhile, the Oval Office meeting between Donald Trump and El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele involved a lot of criminals and also the Maryland father who was mistakenly sent to El Salvador, I beg your pardon, along with prisoners owing to an administrative error. The Supreme Court has ordered that Kilma Abrego Garcia has to be returned to the US, but Monday's meeting between Trump and Bukele made it clear that no one is concerned about that. In fact, Trump wants to send US prisoners to El Salvador if the law permits. Just listen in.
If it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now, we're studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do that, that's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad people. Really bad people. Every bit as bad as the ones coming in. And I made the statement when I heard about this a long time ago now, 4 years ago. When I heard that this guy was having open borders, I said every single criminal from all over the world is going to be dumped into our country. And that's what happened. Jails, the jails of the Congo were emptied out. The jails of Venezuela were emptied out. And you know what happened? Their crime went way down.
Well, let's switch tracks now. China's President Xi Jinping has called for stronger ties with Vietnam on trade and supply chains amid disruptions caused by US tariffs as he attended in Hanoi the signing of dozens of cooperation agreements between the two communist-run nations. US President Trump said that China and Vietnam were meeting to figure out how to harm the US. But the visit, planned for weeks and part of a wider trip in Southeast Asia, comes as Beijing faces 145% US duties, while Vietnam is negotiating a reduction of threatened US tariffs of 46% that would otherwise apply in July after a global moratorium expires. In other news, the broadcast journalist Gayle King and the singer Katy Perry made a brief trip into space on a flight operated by Jeff Bezos' private company Blue Origin. This was the first time an all-female crew had been to space since 1963, and this flight on Blue Origin's New Shepard rocket lasted 10 minutes and 21 seconds and took off from Blue Origin's launch site, one in West Texas. Now, flights on the New Shepard rocket, which provide for a few minutes of weightlessness, do not have a pilot, you must note. Meanwhile, some critics have chafed at the suggestion that this all-female crew you see represented a moment of feminist progress. But the New Shepard program, which is the centerpiece of Blue Origin's space tourism business, is an avenue for the wealthy, the powerful, and well-connected to go to space.
Oh, the moon! You guys, I will have to tell you, look at the moon. That's amazing.
Meanwhile, some will still tell you that space is for everyone to explore and technology for everyone's benefit. This is something that the European Union's Special Envoy for Space has also emphasized. Currently, she's in New Delhi to explore possibilities and further enhance cooperation in the space sector between India and Europe. Her visit to India comes weeks after the historic and landmark visit by European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen and the EU College of Commissioners. Listen in.
In terms of India, in terms of our context, we have a very robust space program, and we were one of the early nations actually to move into the space programs. So it is quite a well-developed space program. But EU has collaborated with us. We have had technological exchanges with the European Union. How do you think, you intensify that cooperation going forward with those famous names you said, Galileo and
Copernicus.
Yeah. How do you intensify that cooperation?
I think that is something that we need to have a discussion about with the Indian counterparts, where we bring all actors together on one table. My focus is on security and defense, but my colleagues at the European Commission very much focus on the European Space Program. And on the Indian side, you have quite a number of interlocutors as well, civilian and defense. So my objective will be that we can come to an agreement on how to engage jointly on how we can improve that cooperation. That's already going on. So that will be setting up such a dialogue. Those can be very big things. You need a lot of people, and that means you also need a lot of preparation to get it right. Because it may seem easy, let's have a dialogue. We are having a dialogue. But between governments and with such a wide scope, it gets more complicated than that.
Setting up of a dialogue, you said that itself is a big task. But eventually those dialogues need to yield something.
Yes, yeah. But you can't do something if you don't first agree on it. But really, we are really very ready to become concrete very quickly once we have established, what are the common interests are and where we have the best scope of moving forward. We really see this as a process that should yield results as soon as possible. In space we can't wait. Things are happening so fast. We shouldn't just sit there and wait for other countries to do it for us.
Also, since you look at the defense and security aspect of it, the challenges that we have in the space, like one of the challenges today is some of our military aircraft on the Chinese border were facing a spoofing problem that you mentioned. Now, we don't know who the actor is behind it, right? But it was on the Chinese frontier. The challenges are evolving, and so should be the responses. Yes. And do you think that the nation states particularly are in a position that they can find a quick response to these challenges, and then probably those responses can be codified for a global same platform usage?
That will be the ultimate objective. I think we, as international community, we already take a big step if we can agree on a norm. Like spoofing is not okay, for example. And that we then develop the mechanisms for attribution, which can be very, very complicated because all countries will need to accept the results. But then if you have this format to discuss internationally, like with other treaties, you could set up a mechanism indeed for a response. And when I'm talking response, I speak of a diplomatic response, right? Not of a military response. That's not how the EU works.
Well, news and updates continue in a moment right after this very short break. Do stay tuned.
From energy grids to tech breakthroughs to defense cooperation, Prime Minister Modi's fourth visit to Sri Lanka is set to be the most consequential, one that will elevate and reshape the India-Sri Lanka ties from here on. And watch that unmatched, non-stop Ground coverage on NDTV World with me, Gauri Dwivedi, right here from Colombo.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
You've been nominated several times for the Grammys, but what it's been like the last 25 years? Because, music is also a fairly competitive field. It's, of course, the search to find your identity is there. You want to do that. You want to probably isolate yourself from the noise. But at the end of the day, the arts as a field is also a very competitive space, isn't it?
I didn't go into music to become an artist. I'd never imagined I'd make an album. That wasn't why I went into music. I went to music to sing. You know what I would do when I started singing? I became a music beggar. I heard for the very first time, I heard Pandit Jasraj sing. And I heard him, I was sitting in the first row because I was a patron of this arts organization. I didn't know who he was. I never heard Hindustani music. I'd been in Brazilian, Carnatic, all of that, but never much with Hindustani. I sat in the first row, and then he started singing. And then for the next 4 hours or 3 hours that he sang, I must have cried through the entire concert of his because it was so beautiful, so magical. And in my mind, I said to myself, I want to learn from him. And, like this, but of course, most of these people take people.
Well, Hungary's parliament has passed an amendment to the constitution that allows the government to ban public events by LGBTQ communities, a decision that legal scholars and critics are calling another step towards authoritarianism. The amendment declares that children's rights to moral, physical and spiritual development supersede any right other than the right to life, including the right to peacefully assemble. And with that, let's turn our attention to a quick update from Canada, where Prime Minister Mark Carney has been accused of pandering to Sikhs on Baisakhi. He's actually facing online outrage after attending a Baisakhi event. He was seen in a Gurdwara along with his wife, also making langar, serving langar, eating the langar, but he's been criticized for ignoring Palm Sunday, and instead he's been accused of pandering to Sikhs on Baisakhi. As we've been covering, Belgium police has arrested Mehul Choksi, but there is a strong possibility that Mehul Choksi will approach higher authorities to challenge his extradition to India. He has been on the run from the law for 7 full years. Take a look at the finer developments.
Fugitive diamond merchant Mehul Choksi under arrest in Belgium. The police in Belgium have arrested Choksi following an extradition request by Indian probe agencies for his alleged involvement in the 13,500 crore rupees Punjab National Bank scam case. Belgian Justice Department confirmed the arrest to NDTV.
The client was taken to custody on Saturday, and at the moment he is in prison. And there the procedure is not to apply for bail. The procedure is to apply for file an appeal. And during that appeal, the request is made that he should not be kept in detention. He should be permitted to defend himself, oppose the extradition request while not being in custody.
Choksi was reportedly preparing to flee to Switzerland under the guise of seeking medical treatment when he was arrested. The arrest marks a major breakthrough in a relentless 7-year pursuit by Indian authorities across 3 countries. Choksi had obtained an F residency card in Belgium in November last year by using forged documents, allegedly involving his wife Preeti Choksi, a Belgian national. He falsely cited humanitarian grounds and critical medical conditions to gain the residency, all while concealing his dual citizenship status. He remains both an Indian and Antiguan citizen.
Belgian Justice Ministry has written back to NDTV on our request and confirmed 2 things: that Mehul Choksi, fugitive economic offender accused of swindling multiple billion rupees from Indian public sector banks, is in the custody of the Belgium authorities, and they are actively working on an extradition request that they have received from the government of India based on the strength of an Interpol Red Corner notice issued by the Central Bureau of Investigation.
This is not Choksi's first run-in with the international law enforcement. In 2021, he was arrested in Dominica for illegal entry, triggering a dramatic sequence of legal battles. The CBI was dispatched to secure his extradition, but his lawyers successfully argued for his return to Antigua for medical reasons. The British Queen's Privy Council later ruled in his favour, and he was flown back to Antigua after spending 51 days in jail. Despite multiple setbacks, Indian authorities persisted. They learned of Choksi's presence in Belgium last year and promptly alerted local agencies, sharing a comprehensive dossier detailing his role in the massive bank fraud. Belgian police arrested him shortly after, preventing what would have been another escape, this time to Switzerland. Choksi has previously offered to cooperate with Indian agencies via video conferencing, citing his health and inability to travel. However, this proposal was rejected. With this latest arrest, India appears to be inching closer to bringing fugitive businessmen back to face trial on home soil. Your report, NDTV.
Well, in other news, a judge in Bangladesh has issued an arrest warrant for British MP Tulip Siddiq, the niece of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, in connection with a corruption case involving state-owned land, according to a report. But the former city minister, Tulip Siddiq, has said an arrest warrant issued against her in Bangladesh over allegations she illegally received a plot of land from her aunt, the country's ousted former Prime Minister, is a politically motivated smear campaign. In fact, the Hampstead and Highgate MP said no one from Bangladesh authorities has contacted her, and the entire time they've done a trial by media. Thank you for investing your time in watching this edition of The World 24/7. As always, we'll keep tracking the latest for you. Do stay tuned.
From energy grids to tech breakthroughs to defence cooperation, Prime Minister Modi's 4th visit to Sri Lanka is set to be the most consequential, one that will elevate and reshape the India-Sri Lanka ties from here on. And watch that unmatched, non-stop ground coverage on NDTV World with me, Gauri Dwivedi, right here from Colombo.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
You've been nominated several times for the Grammys, but what it's been like the last 25 years, because music is also a fairly competitive field. It's Of course, the search to find your identity is there. You want to do that. You want to probably isolate yourself from the noise. But at the end of the day, the arts as a field is also a very competitive space, isn't it?
I didn't go into music to become an artist. I'd never imagined I'd make an album. That wasn't why I went into music. I went to music to sing. You know what I would do when I started singing? I became a music beggar. I truly would. I heard for the very first time, I heard Pandit Jasraj.
This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
Good morning, you're watching NDTV 24/7. This is the breakfast show. I'm Divya Vada. We have a whole lot lined up for you, including Saudi Arabia's cutting its Indian Hajj quota by 80%. Now, it is the Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister as well as the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister up in arms, asking the government to interfere. But we'll also get you the details of MS Dhoni creating history. First, let's get you the headlines. Saudi Arabia slashes its Hajj quota by 80%. MK's Alan Abdullah. It's the ruling and the opposition parties coming together to voice their concerns after the reported cancellation of 52,000 Hajj slots by Saudi Arabia for Indian pilgrims. In the Muda case, it is the court that will be hearing the plea of the Enforcement Directorate as far as giving that clean chit to the Chief Minister Siddaramaiah is concerned. That case is coming up today. And the Allahabad High Court, in which that judgment of snapping the pajama strings not amounting to rape. Now the Supreme Court is going to resume its hearing today. The Supreme Court stayed the inhumane and the insensitive judgment. And Kiran Rijiju's first interview since the Waqf Act, defending the Waqf Act and attacking the opposition, saying it's the Mamata Banerjee government, and it is particularly the Chief Minister inciting the people to protest. And it's the poor Muslims that will see the benefits in due course of time. MS Dhoni has created history by becoming the first player in IPL history to complete 200 dismissals as a keeper during Chennai's match versus Lucknow on Monday night.
That's the easiest stuff in MS. I had him at the start of the over. I've definitely got him now.
And Donald Trump has now come down heavy as far as the prestigious Harvard University is concerned, freezing its funding. We're talking about $2.2 billion funding that's been frozen for defying Trump's campus demands. Let's get to your top story. That's disturbing news emerging from Saudi Arabia, as now Saudi Arabia has decided to cut 80% of India's private Hajj quota, and that has now been abruptly cut. The ruling and the opposition parties have come together to voice their concerns after the reported cancellation of 52,000 Hajj slots by Saudi Arabia for Indian pilgrims, and has urged the central government as well as the Ministry of External Affairs to take up the matter. This sudden decision is causing a lot of distress, urging the Ministry of External Affairs to intervene by taking this matter up with the government in Saudi Arabia, urging the Prime Minister to intervene.
मैं तो गुजारिश करूंगा वज़ीर आज़म से, क्योंकि सऊदी अरेबिया इनके काफ़ी करीब है, कि उनसे गुजारिश करें। यह 52,000 लोगों का मसला है, और सारी ज़िंदगी पैसा जमा करते हैं कि ये फरीज़ा पूरा कर सके। ज़िंदगी में हर एक मुसलमान को ये गर्ज है, उम्मीद है कि वहाँ के दीदार कर सके। अब वज़ीर आज़म और सऊदी अरेबिया तक है।
Ghazali joining us to get us more on this. Ghazali, it takes a lot of planning to be able to, take upon the Hajj pilgrimage and to be able to go there. And now this sudden decision that's come about by the Saudi Arabia government. Firstly, what's caused this? And, it's really putting a lot of stress as far as the pilgrims are concerned.
See, we need to understand that this quota of Hajj pilgrims for every country is fixed. We saw in January, Kiran Rijiju, the Ministry of Minority Affairs, who was there. He signed a agreement with the government of Saudi Arabia, the Ministry of Hajj and Umrah there, that how the number of pilgrims from India and their quota has been increased to more than 1,70,000. Now, out of those 1,70,000 of the total Indian pilgrims who have to go to for Hajj, for pilgrimage, some of them, are around 80% of the pilgrimage or the pilgrims, will be routed through the Hajj Committee of India, which is a government body, which is a government recognized body. Now, the rest of the 20% of the pilgrims have to go through the private Hajj operators or private organizers or the private groups who facilitate or who help the pilgrims reach Makkah and the other holy city of Medina to perform their Hajj there. But what has happened in the last 24 hours that the Ministry of Minority Affairs in India has issued a circular informing those private Hajj operators that the government of Saudi Arabia and the Ministry of Hajj and Umrah over there has cancelled their registration. It is partly because of what you are picking up as per the reports is that this is due to some payment dispute from the private Hajj operators there. And also, this is a recent development in the last 1 week. We have seen that how Saudi government is also curbing on getting the crowd over there to sort of minimize the stampede for the better crowd management. They are not issuing enough Umrah visas and different kind of tourist visas also for the people because the Hajj season is about to commence. So this is one of those measures they are taking for the crowd control management, but it is taking a toll on those pilgrims who had already paid their money to the private Hajj operators. Now they are in a limbo, and that is why you heard the leaders from Kashmir and as well as from Tamil Nadu, Chief Minister MK Stalin also raising it, and different leaders are now asking External Affairs Ministry as well as Prime Minister to intervene in the issue, as we know that the Prime Minister is also going to embark on a 2-day visit to Saudi Arabia later this month.
Right, when we talk about last year, the number of people that went from India to Saudi Arabia in 2024 was about 1,40,000, and that figure was supposed to go up this year. That is what we were expecting. Let's just also go across to Sam Daniel. Sam Daniel, of course, Omar Abdullah, Mehbooba Mufti, all asking for the MEA to interfere. Take us to the reaction coming in from MK Stalin on this.
Divya, Chief Minister M.K. Stalin has written to External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar asking him to engage with Saudi government to solve this issue. He says that cut in private Hajj quota in India has distressed large number of people, thousands of pilgrims, he says. There is no clarity exactly where the fault lies. But when we spoke to people who are in the know of this particular issue, they say they blame it on private operators. They say 92,000 passes or that kind of quota was given to them, but they failed to register or incorporate details online, because of which those who go through this private mode option, they are being hit in large numbers. But the larger picture, many would be unable to, in that sense, make their Hajj visit this time. It's in this context, Chief Minister M.K. Stalin has now urged Jai Shankar to engage with Saudi government and to make sure this issue is resolved soonest, Divya.
Right, of course. Thank you so much, Sam and Ghazali, for joining us. And this year, Hajj is expected to take place from the 4th of June to the 9th of June, depending on the sighting of the moon. But interference of the government is being asked by the opposition as well as the government in this particular matter. Let's just get you more news, and this is in regard to the Buddha case, and this is in regard to the clean sheet that was given to Siddaramaiah. So the ED is now appealing against that decision and that clean sheet that was given by the Lokayukta to the Karnataka's Chief Minister. The court to pass that order today. The Lokayukta had given a clean sheet as far as Siddaramaiah and that scam in regard to his wife. Now, will the Chief Minister get relief? And that is the big question in this regard. Let's just get my colleague Deepak, who is joining us from Bengaluru. Deepak, what time is this case coming up? And, take us through the clean sheet that was given by the Lokayukta that has, in fact, got the ED questioning that order, and of course, bringing about this case back in the court. Of course, take us through the details.
Well, it was after a lot of, back and forth that the governor had given sanction. The Lokayukta began investigation. This was based on multiple complaints that came in that, the sites that were allocated to the chief minister's wife, were beyond the value of, what the Buddha or the Mysuru Urban Development Authority had, in fact, taken, and they had to give compensation. Now, after the Lokayukta began investigation, after a couple of months, they did file a report. It was a B report, which essentially meant that they found no evidence to prove any wrongdoing from the side of the chief minister or the other accused in the case. Now, the enforcement directorate, meanwhile, of course, which also had taken up a case. They had shared some of the details with the Lokayukta, which was produced in court as well, and they went on to argue that the Lokayukta B report should not be accepted by the court because there is sufficient evidence against Mr. Siddaramaiah. Now, today, of course, the matter will come up. Last year, there was a hearing. There was a lot of arguments and counter arguments from the lawyers representing the Lokayukta and the enforcement directed. The court for special court for elected representatives is in fact going to deliver its the verdict today on whether this B report will be accepted or the enforcement directorate's protest petition will actually be the one that will be accepted, which would mean that there'll be more trouble coming the way of the Karnataka chief minister.
Right, of course, Deepak, all eyes on that crucial hearing that's coming up, but also stay with us for our next story as well. And this is in regard to a strike that's been called by the Federation of Karnataka State Lorry Owners and Agents Association that have started that indefinite strike against the diesel price hike in the state and other issues that the association has flagged. The Federation is the biggest transport body in Karnataka, and we're talking about nearly 6 lakh trucks that have been enrolled with them. Now, Deepak, back with us. Deepak, we're talking about over 6 lakh transport vehicles that have gone off the roads from midnight last night as part of that indefinite strike, calling this a protest against the state government's anti-transport trade policies. Take us through the details.
Well, one of the biggest concerns that they really have is the diesel, price hike. This is the second hike coming in from the state government itself after they've increased the sales tax on diesel. The latest one was in the first week of April. That was a 2 rupee hike. They're saying that this is unacceptable because the prices of transport has gone up so much because of the diesel price hike. They also have other issues that they're flagging off. Such as the state toll gates, where they're saying that the roads are not maintained well, they're in poor condition, but then the truck drivers are having to pay state tolls, which is not very common in other parts of the country. They're also saying that in a city like Bengaluru, the mini trucks or smaller trucks are also not being allowed, and that is becoming a big problem for the owners. They're also pointing out issues pertaining to trucks carrying debris out of Bengaluru and various other concerns. But the predominant and the main primary concern seems to be the price of diesel, and they're saying that the government should roll it back. As of now, over 6 lakh trucks have decided that they will not be entering Karnataka, which would essentially mean that logistics in particular today will be severely hit, and you will probably feel the pinch in 24 to 48 hours. Though essential commodities as such, they cannot call for, a boycott or rather, a protest as such of bringing in essentials. But we've been told that certain vehicles bringing in milk and vegetables as well, trucks will also stop midway and, support the protest that is being organized.
Right, Deepak, thank you so much for getting us those details. And of course, our next story is coming out of Bengaluru, and this is a shocking case. We're talking about a group of men allegedly assaulted a 38-year-old woman outside a mosque in Bengaluru after she reportedly was summoned there over a domestic dispute. The incident was recorded on video and later circulated online, leading to the arrest of the men. We have Deepak back with us. Deepak, 6 men have been arrested in this case. Take us to what really happened here.
Well, this incident has come to the fore from Davangere, and it is quite a appalling and shocking incident to say the least. And the incident took place in the first week of April, has come to light later. The police, in fact, got to know about it after the videos went viral, approached the woman, registered a case in this regard. And more importantly, when we look at all the developments here, we should note that this was over an alleged illicit affair that that these men suspected her of having. The husband has gone ahead and complained about it to a local mosque in Tavarakere in Davangere, after which she was summoned there, then beaten with wooden sticks and pipes, is what the FIR states. 6 people at this point in time arrested. But what this video has once again, shown is the kind of situation that there is when it comes to law and order. Definitely, this issue is going to develop politically in the next few hours with the opposition, which has been, of course, mounting a lot of pressure on the government over the recent crimes against women. This will definitely send shockwaves in the political circles, and also, the common man will want to question the kind of behavior that is on display here.
Right.
Want action against the accused in the case.
Absolutely, Deepak. Of course, this is coming on the heels, of course, of that case in Bengaluru again, where this woman was assaulted. Finally, the man has been caught. But take us through, what really happened here. We believe that the group of men allegedly attacked her using sticks, pipes, clubs, and even they were trying to attempt to basically hit her with stones, and the intent was to kill her.
Yes, the FIR mentions some startling details. It talks about how this woman was under medication and she had taken some pills and slept in her house. When her husband arrived there, he's ransacked the entire house because he suspected that there was a man there. After which he goes ahead and goes to a local masjid there nearby and speaks to the committee. And then she was taken there and then beaten by these people using water pipes and sticks, and then questioned about her morality. And even the two men who were suspected to have a illicit relationship with her also beaten up. 6 people at this point in time arrested. And quite an appalling incident. And more importantly, when you look at the bystanders there, just spectators, even as we look at all the drama that is holding, people just continue to remain there and watch and without even trying to help a woman. In fact, one elderly man tries to help the woman, but he too is dragged away from there by these goons who continue the assault on the woman.
Right. Well, Deepak, of course, we will keep tracking the story and coming back to you for more on that. Moving on now to the Supreme Court that will resume hearing the suo motu case with regard to a judgment that took place in the Allahabad High Court. This is the judgment that came about on the 17th of March, whereby the judge had observed that dragging a minor, breaking the strings of her pajamas and grabbing her breasts before fleeing the place would not really amount to rape or rape. Now, the top court had stayed that controversial part of the order while calling the observations insensitive and inhumane. Now, let's just go across to my colleague Nupur, who's joining us. Nupur, of course, we are expecting the Supreme Court to take a call in regard to that judgment by the Allahabad High Court, and the Allahabad High Court coming, making these controversial remarks and controversial judgments, and that's really been getting them a lot of flack.
Yes, Divya, in fact, very recently, just last week, we have reported that there was another Allahabad High Court order whereby the judge had made very startling observations with regard to a sexual assault case on women. And he had, in fact, went ahead to say that the women, even if the woman was raped, she was herself responsible as she was mature enough to know the morality and consequences of her actions. Now, today, the Supreme Court will resume hearing this case that you're talking about. Very importantly, the court will also be hearing the lawyers representing the mother of the minor victim here. The mother had also approached the Supreme Court when the Supreme Court took the suo motu action on the Allahabad High Court's observations. Previously, the top court has already stayed the controversial parts of the High Court order. Now, the Supreme Court will further be hearing the case and will, in fact, be directing further action on that order, or if it may also decide to change the directions and whatever the directions were given, because it was a summoning order of 2 accused in that case, and where the High Court had actually said that this act or preparatory act before fleeing would not amount to attempt to rape or rape, and he had in fact watered down the charges to sexual assault, aggravated sexual assault. Now it will be very important to see that what the Supreme Court says on question of law when it comes to such a case where there was a minor involved, there is POXO involved, and it will be important to see that what the court has to say with that regard, and also on the mother's plea. Last week only the mother had in fact requested the court to redact her name in the Allahabad High Court order. You can see how problematic that order was, that it even disclosed the victim mother's identity. Last week only the Supreme Court had to intervene and in fact direct the High Court registry to redact her mother's name. Now the top court will again resume hearing the case, and it will be important to see that what the top court has to say about this Allahabad High Court order, and also maybe if it has also taken note of this other order that we had in fact reported just last week.
Right. Of course, Nupur, it is the victim's mother, like you mentioned, along with the organization called Just Rights for Children Alliance, challenging that Allahabad High Court ruling. Take us through what the Supreme Court had said in regard to this matter.
had made very strong observation. Justice B.R. Gawai, while staying this order, had in fact came down heavily on the Allahabad High Court and had said that the observations in the order were totally insensitive and inhuman. And in fact, he went ahead to observe that the judge had in fact, it cannot be said that the order was passed in a rushed manner. The judge had taken considerable amount of time before passing this order, as he had reserved the same order for quite some time. So the Supreme Court in very strong words said that it cannot be said that he has not applied his mind in this order and had in fact taken a very dim view of the observations made by the Allahabad High Court in this order, which had also in fact triggered massive outrage across the country, if you remember.
Right, of course, so we will keep tracking this story, and of course, you know, the Supreme Court coming down heavily on that insensitive and inhuman remarks made by the Allahabad High Court in regard to this particular case of a minor, and it was finally the mother challenging that ruling that has in fact got the Supreme Court to take up this matter. We will keep tracking that story. Thank you so much, Nupur, for joining us. Let's get you the latest as far as Mumbai terror attacks mastermind Tahabur Rana, who's being interrogated for 8 to 10 hours daily by the NIA in order to unravel a larger conspiracy behind the dreaded attacks. Now, the NIA officials are ensuring medical checkups are in place for Rana, and he's being allowed to meet with his lawyer as well, according to the order of a Delhi court. Now, of course, the NIA has his custody for the next few days. Do remember that they were granted 18 days custody on Friday. Now let's just go across to my colleague who is joining us, Shreya, from the National Capital. Shreya, take us through, you know, what is it that the NIA is saying in regard to the investigation so far? Because, you know, it has been a few days since they've had custody of him. Has he started to cooperate? Are there any details that are emerging?
Well, of course, as per sources, you know, following his US extradition, you know, even in the custody of NIA, Tahabur Rana has not shown an iota of remorse. He has been calm and composed without showing any tantrums. And we also know that he has been offered his basic needs, such as a soft tip pen, you know, to prevent self-harm, a notepad, a Quran that he has been reading 5 times a day. He's also meeting his court-appointed lawyer every alternate days. We know that he is under suicide watch, that is 24/7 human as well as CCTV surveillance in the NIA headquarters, which is blanketed with thick security cover. And right now he is quite anxious about the upcoming legal battle that he will have to fight. He believes that his fate will be that of Ajmal Kasad, who has been the lone terrorist who was executed in 2012 because of his role in the Mumbai terror attack. So he is constantly questioning his lawyer about the UPA charges. He's trying to understand the Indian judicial system and the charges that he has been facing. It could lead to either death penalty or life imprisonment. So there is an anxiety there, as this is what the sources are telling. And as far as the investigation is concerned, we know that NIA has been, you know, very focused on some of the things. Firstly, of course, his involvement with ISI, with the terror organizations like Lashkar-e-Taiba, and also, you know, his connect with this mysterious Dubai-based individual who he met before the 26/11 attack, and he could potentially be connected with the Dawood Ibrahim's D company. So there are a lot of unanswered questions as to his involvement. How involved was ISI in this Mumbai 26/11 attack? What was the role of this Dubai-based individual? How much information did he have? And also, NIA is also trying to probe, you know, the different sleeper cells that were recruited by David Headley, you know, in different parts of India. Are these sleeper cells still active in India? This is also something that they're trying to extract the answers from the Tahabur Rana. And also the court order that has been accessed by NDTV, the 12-page court order, that goes on to, you know, underscore the need for a prolonged interrogation to confront Tahabur Rana with eyewitnesses, forensic evidence, and also documents tying him to the attack. back. So, of course, there are a lot of questions that they're trying to extract, but considering that he is a hardened terrorist, the sources tell us that it is going to be a time-taking process and a difficult process to extract those kind of concrete evidence from him that will finally give way to the questions, the answers to the questions that have eluded justice for the last 16 years, particularly the fact that how the Pakistan's state machinery has been in connect with the top terror masterminds. So the NIA will continue to dig these answers out of Tawur Rana in the coming days. Back to you.
Right, of course, he hasn't made any demands in regard to his diet or his food, and he has been given the regular food that they have been providing to the people. Now, let's just get you more news. Thank you so much, Shreya, for joining us with those details. This is in regard to Delhi's policy in order to curb the pollution problem. Now, new EV 2.0 policy may be announced in the national capital, and according to this, in the coming time, 13,200 public charging points will be installed in the capital. Currently, there are only about 2,452, and the plan is to install charging points every 5 kilometers in the national capital. On scrapping the 12-year-old petrol or diesel two-wheeler bike or scooter, one of course can get an additional discount as well on buying an electric bike. So there's some changes that are being made as far as the second phase of the electric vehicle policy is concerned, which is expected to be enforced soon. It will generate about 20,000 new employment opportunities, ranging from running charging stations to taking care of battery recycling. So we have Ishika joining us. Ishika, take us through the changes that we can expect in Delhi, and this is of course going to help bring down the pollution, and that is one of the biggest agenda as far as the new government is concerned, saying that they're not going to wait for pollution to set in during the winter months, and they're going to be curbing that, and for that they are now going to be introducing these new measures.
Well, Divya, as you rightly mentioned, today, in fact, a very crucial cabinet meeting of the Delhi government is going to take place. This is going to take place around 3 p.m. is what we are understanding right now. And here, two major, issues are going to be discussed. Number one, certainly the power subsidy that we talk about in Delhi. So for the continuation of that, the stamp of approval has to be made, and that is what is going to be discussed today. Now, remember that under the power subsidy, if we talk about up to 200 units, you get it for free. And in fact, a 50% incentive when it comes to 201 to 400 units per month. So for that continuation, the stamp of approval is required, and that is what is going to be discussed in the cabinet meeting. Now, apart from that, certainly the EV policy, the Delhi EV policy 2.0 is also going to be the center of discussion in this particular cabinet meeting. And we have already told our viewers that, you can expect a lot more in this EV policy. Number one, certainly being an incentive of around rupees 30,000 when it comes to the purchase of two-wheelers to all the, women drivers, in fact, who have a valid driving license. And it is going to be for the first 10,000 women who are going to purchase it. Not just that, with the EV policy, in fact, the Delhi government is also, in fact, trying to achieve its target. And when it does so, certainly the pollution level here in the national capital is also going to come down. Now, if we talk about, the Delhi government has certainly said that they are aiming to achieve 100% electrification of bus transport in Delhi by 2027. So this is the target that the Delhi government has set in the Delhi EV policy 2.0. So discussion regarding the incentive and how, in fact, the revenue will be generated, all of that will be discussed, and we can certainly hope that it will soon be introduced in Delhi. Over to you.
Ishika, all eyes on that cabinet meeting coming up in regard to discuss the draft of the electric vehicle 2.0 policy that will remain in force. And of course, the target, like you mentioned, is to make 90% of the new registrations in Delhi electric vehicles by 2027 and about 100% by 2030. We will keep coming back to you. Thank you so much for those details. Now, in an exclusive interview to NDTV, Kiran Rijiju, the Minority Affairs Minister, has spoken about the Waqf Act for the very first time. He's gone on to say that it is the opposition that is, in fact, targeting the opposition and also particularly targeting the Mamata Banerjee government, saying that the Chief Minister of West Bengal is the one who's enticing people to protest. But he's also gone on to say that people, the common man, will finally see it in time, the benefits that they will be reeling from this.
But then why do you think, there are a plethora of plaints in the Supreme Court? Opposition parties have rushed to Supreme Court. The number of other bodies which have rushed to Supreme Court. Supreme Court is all set to listen to it in that, and you will have to defend the law in the Supreme Court also.
See, whatever will happen in the Supreme Court, the government will take a position. But I'm sure the Supreme Court will understand. Any law passed by the Parliament of India has to have its own sanctity, and the Supreme Court of India will intervene if they feel that any provision is ultra vires. If any provision directly violates the specific provisions of the Constitution, they can come out with judgment. But I'm very confident that Supreme Court will not venture into legislative process.
And you are confident that the law is sound as far as Constitution is concerned, and it is not unconstitutional as many people are saying?
Well, the definition of constitutionality of any provision will be decided by the Supreme Court. But what I'm saying is, any legislative process which has went through due process of legislation must be given its due sanctity, even by the Supreme Court, because we have to respect each other. If tomorrow the government starts giving comments and interferes into the judiciary thing, it won't be nice. So the separation of three organs are well defined, and the legislative process is a well settled process in India. Yes, there are instances where Supreme Court had interfered, and in fact they had certain provisions were struck down in the past. But I'm sure in this Waqf Amendment Bill, which has become an act now, it has seen absolutely the entire process of debates, discussions, consultations. I have not seen any other bill being scrutinized so much. We have received more than 1 crore representations. The JPC set for maximum numbers of time ever, and the Parliament had the longest ever debates. And in fact, we created the record in Rajya Sabha by sitting continuously for 17 hours and 2 minutes. We need to understand that these are the values which we create in the process of making a historic legislation, and we need to value that.
Mr. Rijiju, I must ask you one question, that a lot of aspects of this bill, like inclusion of non-Muslims in the boards that will govern the Waqf Act henceforth, are generating a lot of controversy. Could you not have avoided it?
There's no question of avoidance. It's a matter of correcting the historical mistakes which had happened in the past. If it was a management of religious institutions of the Muslims, then it is a very straightforward case that nobody should interfere into the internal matters of any religious sites, institutions or body. Suppose the Waqf board claims a particular piece of land and it goes to a tribunal or court, then we can say that the tribunal will take a call or the High Court can take a call. So we say that High Court judge should not be Muslim or Hindu. We can't say that. High Court judge is High Court judge. In a similar way, if there is a dispute between two parties and one party, supposedly the Waqif is a Muslim and the lane which is in dispute belongs to Hindu or other groups, the matter will come to the board. Do you think that the Waqf board, which will decide on that matter, should be fair, or at least seem to be fair? So when the Waqf board is deciding on a matter which concerns different groups, then it is better that the Waqf board has a members from diverse background. However, what we have done is, in the Central Waqf Council, only 2 people are non-Muslims. Out of 22, only 2 are non-Muslims. And the other 2, maximum, that is in case if the minister, the chairman, is non-Muslim, then he can become the member. Means chairman means one of the members. And the CEO, the joint secretary concerned of the ministry, if he's a non-Muslim, then he's there by virtue of being in the post. So it is not question of bringing outside people to manage or interfere into the Muslim affairs. It is a statutory body created by the government which will give a fair judgment while conducting a particular matter. So to say that non-Muslims are brought into the Waqf board, it is a failed argument. So the basic problem is some of the people are not trying to understand the reality. They're just going on misleading the people, launching, kind of a campaign for creating a narrative to scare the Muslims that the government is trying to take away the masjids, the qabristans, and then all other properties of the Muslims. It's very unfortunate. It has been debated so much in the parliament. And finally, a balanced act has been passed. I have received large numbers of Muslim communities, especially those who are belonging to poorer sections, those who are from the weaker sections, minorities within the Muslims, or you can say different sects within the Muslim community. They have welcomed it. It is only those people who are amassing lots of Waqf properties and misusing it for their personal gains. They are the people apparently inciting the people and telling the people to come to the street and protest.
Well, very shocking news coming in at the moment. This is in regard to a murder that's taken place in the national capital of a 20-year-old girl who was shot dead in Delhi. The body of the girl has been recovered from a flat. Apparently, she was shot outside in a park outside the flat, but her body has been recovered from that flat. Let's listen in to what the authorities have to say.
लड़की को गोली मार दी है। जीटीबी एनक्लेव का एरिया है। अभी बॉडी देख के लग रहा है 20 साल की उम्र होगी लड़की की, और बॉडी आइडेंटिफाई नहीं हुई अभी तक।
मैम कितने शॉट गोली मारी होंगी वहाँ पे, गन शॉट?
मेन तो पोस्टमार्टम के बाद ही पता चलेगा, लेकिन 2 गोलियाँ दिख रही हैं।
Mukesh, my colleague, joining us on the phone line to get us details. Mukesh, a very shocking case of a 20-year-old's body that has been recovered in this particular area. Take us through the details that you have for us in regard to perhaps that she wasn't shot inside the flat, but perhaps in a park which is right outside.
देखिए, बिल्कुल ये घटना बीती रात की है। जीटीवी एनक्लेव में एक पार्क के बाहर रात करीब 10 बजे एक लड़की जो 20 साल की थी, वो किसी लड़के से बात कर रही थी, और जो पासर भाई थे उन्होंने ये लड़की को देखा था। इसी दौरान उस लड़के से किसी बात को लेकर लड़की की बहस हो गई, और उसके बाद लड़के ने लड़की को 2 गोलियां मारी और वहां से भाग गया। इसके बाद जो लोकल लोग थे उन्होंने पुलिस को इन्फॉर्म किया। पुलिस मौके पर पहुंची, लेकिन तब तक लड़की की मौत हो चुकी थी, तो उसकी डेड बॉडी को पोस्टमार्टम के लिए भेजा गया है। अब तक लड़की की पहचान नहीं हो पाई है कि आखिर वो कौन थी, कहाँ की रहने वाली थी। उसको आइडेंटिफाई करने के लिए लगातार कोशिश जारी है। वहीं जो आसपास सीसीटीवी कैमरे लगे हैं उनके बेसिस पर जो एक्यूज्ड है उसको पकड़ने की कोशिश की जा रही है, उसको आइडेंटिफाई करने की कोशिश की जा रही है। तो अभी पुलिस इस पूरे मामले में कई एंगल से जांच कर रही है, लेकिन अभी ना तो लड़की आइडेंटिफाई हो पाई है और ना ही एक्यूज जिसने इस मर्डर को अंजाम दिया है वो ना तो वो पकड़ा गया है। तो पुलिस लगातार कोशिश कर रही है उसे पकड़ने की। जी
राइट मुकेश, तो अभी हमारे पास डिटेल्स काफ़ी कम है इस वक्त, बट ऑफ कोर्स द पुलिस लाइक यू मेंशन इज इन्वेस्टिगेटिंग द केस एंड इट फ्रॉम व्हाट इट सीम्स लाइक इज इट्स अ 20-year-old girl who was murdered outside, but her body has finally been found inside this flat. Thank you so much, Mukesh, for joining us with those details. Now let's just get you details of a plane crash that took place on the weekend. We're talking about an Indian Punjab-born surgeon, Joy Saini. Her 2 children and their partners were killed along with her husband, who piloted a small plane that crashed in New York State. A private plane that crashed in New York over the weekend was carrying those 6 members of a close-knit family of physicians and distinguished student athletes on a trip. This was a trip in order to celebrate the Passover holiday. Now, the twin-engine Mitsubishi went down shortly after noon, and this happened near Massachusetts, killing everyone on board, according to authorities. Now, from what we're really hearing is that initially they had missed the initial approach, and that is when a request was made for a new approach plan. And on hearing this, while they were preparing the new coordinates, the air traffic controllers attempted to relay a low altitude alert 3 times over with no response from the pilot and no distress call. So the NTSB did not say what might have caused the aircraft to crash, but they hope to have a preliminary report out within 30 days and a final report within 12 to 24 months. The pilot should have had extra training in regard to the kind of a plane that he was flying, but apparently he did have all the training that he needed. But what really caused this crash, given the fact that the black box that you can see, so the investigation is being carried out, and word is awaited as to what really went down.
But we do know that we verified that this owner and operator, and we have confirmed the owner is the same person as the operator, that this owner and operator went through that training and was fully certified to be on that aircraft and flying. Again, on behalf of all of the NTSB, our sincere condolences to those who lost loved ones in this crash. It's truly a tragedy, and we hate that for the families. It's never an easy thing. So our thoughts are with them, very much so.
Right, of course, more news coming out of the United States, and this time it is Donald Trump hammering the prestigious Harvard University while freezing its funding. We're talking about $2.2 billion of funding that has now, been paused by the government of the United States. We're talking about the U.S. University Harvard that was hit with a $2.2 billion freeze in federal funding on Monday after rejecting a list of sweeping demands that the White House has said that was intended to crack down on the campus and the call for changes in its governance. Now, let's just go across to Vishal. Vishal, what are the demands that were being made by the White House, which was rejected by the university, and which is why the funding has now been paused?
So what they want is essentially 3 to 4 things. The first one is that they want these protests to be banned in campuses across the US, and they don't want students who are engaging in these protests to wear masks. That is one of the main things that they're asking the administration at these universities to do. And the other thing is that they want these DEI hirings, hirings that they do, diversity, equity and inclusion hirings that has been in vogue in the US for a while now. They want these hirings to be stopped. These 2 are the main demands, and they also want students to be identified if they have been involved in the past in various protests. So what the administration has been arguing is that these are steps they are taking to combat anti-Semitism across US campuses that has supposedly arisen in the wake of the Israel-Hamas war. That has been the crux of the whole story, and Harvard has not complied with these demands, saying that they are not willing to go off its independence and its constitutional rights. So Harvard is standing its ground. It's probably one of the strongest statements ever from a proper university in the US. It remains to be seen how other universities are going to respond to it, because almost all the universities face the same threat of their fundings being frozen by the US administration. So it will be interesting to see how this progresses forward, because there's another case going on. Immediately after the US administration contacted Harvard University to comply with these demands, Harvard had filed a counter plea in the court saying that they are not willing to comply with these demands, saying that they won't be letting go of their independence. So it's a lot of legal wrangling, so that will be interesting to see in the near future.
Right, thank you so much, Vishal, for getting us all those details. And another move that's being made by the Donald Trump 2.0 administration. Will he go back on this? What's really going to happen? We'll have to wait and watch. Now, space is for everyone to explore and technology for everyone's benefit, emphasized by the European Union's Special Envoy for Space, who is in New Delhi in order to explore possibilities and further enhance cooperation in space between India and Europe. She spoke with my colleague Nikunj Garg. Let's listen in to this very special interview.
In terms of India, in terms of our context, we have a very robust space program, and we were one of the early nations actually to move into the space programs. So it is quite a well-developed space program. But EU has collaborated with us. We have had technological exchanges with the European Union. How do you think, you intensify that cooperation going forward with those famous names you said, Galileo and
Copernicus.
Yeah. How do you intensify that cooperation?
I think that is something that we need to have a discussion about with the Indian counterparts, where we bring all actors together on one table. My focus is on security and defense, but my colleagues at the European Commission very much focus on the European Space Program. And on the Indian side, you have quite a number of interlocutors as well, civilian and defense. So my objective will be that we can come to agreement on how to engage jointly on how we can improve that cooperation. That's already going on. So that will be setting up such a dialogue. Those can be very big things. You need a lot of people, and that means you also need a lot of preparation to get it right. Because it may seem easy, let's have a dialogue. We are having a dialogue. But between governments and with such a wide scope, it gets more complicated than that.
Setting up of a dialogue, you said that itself is a big task. But eventually those dialogues need to yield something.
Yes, yeah. But you can't do something if you don't first agree on it. But really, we are really very ready to become concrete very quickly once we have established, what our the common interests are and where we have the best scope of moving forward. We really see this as a process that should yield results as soon as possible. In space we can't wait. Things are happening so fast. We shouldn't just sit there and wait for other countries to do it for us.
Also, since you look at the defense and security aspect of it, the challenges that we have in the space, like one of the challenges today is some of our military aircraft on the Chinese border were facing a spoofing problem that you mentioned. Now, we don't know who the actor is behind it, right? But it was on the Chinese frontier. The challenges are evolving, and so should be the responses. And do you think that the nation states particularly are in a position that they can find a quick response to these challenges, and then probably those responses can be codified for a global same platform usage?
That will be the ultimate objective. I think we, as international community, we already take a big step if we can agree on a norm. Like spoofing is not okay, for example. And that we then develop the mechanisms for attribution, which can be very, very complicated because all countries will need to accept the results. But then if you have this format to discuss internationally, like with other treaties, you could set up a mechanism indeed for a response. And when I'm talking response, I speak of a diplomatic response, right? Not of a military response. That's not how the EU works.
And now from Texas to the stars and back again, the broadcast journalist Gayle King and the singer Katy Perry made a brief trip into space on a flight operated by Jeff Bezos' private company, Blue Origin. This is the first time an all-female crew had been to space since 1963. This flight on Blue Origin's New Shepard rocket lasted about 10 minutes and 21 seconds, took off from Blue Origin's launch site, one in West Texas. Flights on the New Shepard rocket, which provide for a few minutes of wastelessness, do not have a pilot. Now, as far as Gayle King is concerned, she went on to say that after this trip, she thought she could do just about anything. And it was Katy Perry who came out, and she literally kissed Mother Earth when she came out. She, in fact, had taken a daisy into space for her daughter, who's called Daisy. Now, in a heartfelt tribute to one of India's most revered classical musicians, the city of San Diego has officially designated Sarod Maestro Amjad Ali Khan. There's a day that's been dedicated, and that day is the 13th of April. The proclamation, led by the council president, celebrating the extraordinary legacy of Ustad Amjad Ali Khan, whose contributions to music and culture have transcended borders for decades. Recognized globally for his unmatched mastery. As far as Sarod is concerned, Ustad Amjad Ali Khan has long been a towering figure in Indian classical music, a recipient of the Padma Vibhushan, India's second highest civilian honor, and he has inspired generations through his artistry, his dedication, and his message of unity through music. And at that, we're slipping in a short break. That's all the time that we had for you on this show. Thank you so much for watching.
From energy grids to tech breakthroughs to defense cooperation, Prime Minister Modi's fourth visit to Sri Lanka is set to be the most consequential, one that will elevate and reshape the India-Sri Lanka ties from here on. And watch that unmatched, non-stop ground coverage on NDTV World with me, Gauri Dwivedi, right here from Colombo.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
You've been nominated several times for the Grammys, but what it's been like the last 25 years, because, you know, music is also a fairly competitive field. It's of course, the search to find your identity is there. You want to do that. You want to probably isolate yourself from the noise. But at the end of the day, the arts as a field is also a very competitive space, isn't it?
I didn't go into music to become an artist. I'd never imagined I'd make an album. It wasn't why I went into music. I went to music to sing. You know what I would do when I started singing? I became a music beggar. I truly would. I heard, for the very first time, I heard Pandit Jasraj sing. And I heard him, I was sitting in the first row because I was a patron of this arts organization. I didn't know who he was. I never heard Hindustani music. I'd been in Brazilian, Carnatic, all of that, but never much with Hindustani. I sat in the first row, and then he started singing. And then for the next 4 hours or 3 hours that he sang, I must have cried through the entire concert of his because it was so beautiful, so magical. And in my mind, I said to myself, I want to learn from him. And, like this, but of course, most of these people take students when you're
They're
5
young
and they live with them and they travel with them and do all of this. But the universe has a way of working. And I've got to tell you a very wonderful story about Pandit Jasraj, who I wanted to learn from, but I didn't know him. And I went to a concert of his after that again. Somebody calls me up. This is a week or two after I'd had this incredible experience, and I'm telling God, or the divine, I want to learn music this way. I want to experience music where this combination of bhakti and notes come together. This is what's going through my head. I'm praying. I don't know quite how I'm doing it. A friend of mine randomly calls me up and he says, 2 weeks later, and he says, and this is so bizarre, the coincidence, that I can't call it a coincidence, I call it universal synchronicity. He says, oh, I'm a single guy, and I'm going to have Pandit Jasraj to my house for dinner tomorrow. But they have just called me up and given me a list of dietary requirements for him, which I cannot meet because I'm a single guy. I was going to order Chinese food, but he doesn't eat onions, he doesn't eat garlic, he doesn't eat anything. I don't know what to do. Do you think we can move the dinner to your house? And, you know, because you've got cooks and stuff, so maybe you can do it. I said, of course, this is the guy I've been dying to meet. Yeah. So this is how I met Pandit Jasraj, and then I begged him to teach me. And I met all these teachers. So for me, this journey of finding music was never about performing. And when Pandit Jasraj gave me his senior most disciple to teach me, Pandit Girish Vazalwar, who passed away, I would sing for 10 hours a day.
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
You've been nominated several times for the Grammys, but what it's been like the last 25 years, because, you know, music is also a fairly competitive field. It's of course, the search to find your identity is there. You want to do that. You want to probably isolate yourself from the noise. But at the end of the day, the arts as a field is also a very competitive space, isn't it?
I didn't go into music to become an artist. I'd never imagined I'd make an album. That wasn't why I went into music. I went to music to sing. You know what I would do when I started singing? I became a music beggar. I truly would. I heard, for the very first time, I heard Pandit Jasraj sing. And I heard him, I was sitting in the first row because I was a patron of this arts organization. I didn't know who he was. I never heard Hindustani music. I'd been in Brazilian, Carnatic, all of that, but never much with Hindustani. I sat in the first row, and then he started singing. And then for the next 4 hours or 3 hours that he sang, I must have cried through the entire concert of his because it was so beautiful, so magical. And in my mind, I said to myself, I want to learn from him. And, you know, like this, but of course, you know, most of these people take students when you're
They're
5
young
and they live with them and they travel with them and do all of this. But the universe has a way of working. And I've got to tell you a very wonderful story about Pandit Jasraj, who I wanted to learn from, but I didn't know him. And I went to a concert of his after that again. Somebody calls me up. This is a week or two after I'd had this incredible experience, and I'm telling God, or the divine, I want to learn music this way. I want to experience music where this combination of bhakti and notes come together. This is what's going through my head. I'm praying. I don't know quite how I'm doing it. A friend of mine randomly calls me up and he says, 2 weeks later, and he says, and this is so bizarre, the coincidence, that I can't call it a coincidence, I call it universal synchronicity. He says, oh, I'm a single guy, and I'm going to have Pandit Jasraj to my house for dinner tomorrow. But they have just called me up and given me a list of dietary requirements for him, which I cannot meet because I'm a single guy. I was going to order Chinese food, but he...
This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
A very good morning. You're watching NDTV 24/7. I'm Divya Vaza. We have a whole lot lined up for you, including this announcement that's been made by Saudi Arabia, an abrupt decision that's been taken just ahead of Hajj. Now, Indian private pilgrims, that amount, that quota has been cut by 80%. We'll get you all the details. Also, MS Dhoni creating history as far as the IPL matches is concerned, while an autonomy push by MK Stalin. Let's get you the headlines first before we get you all the details. In an autonomy push, it is MK Stalin to make a big announcement, and that big announcement is expected today, days after the Supreme Court verdict on the governor of Tamil Nadu. And Saudi Arabia slashes the Hajj quota of Indian private pilgrims by 80%. It's MK Stalin Farooq Abdullah urging the Prime Minister to intervene. The ruling and the opposition parties coming together to voice their concerns after reportedly a cancellation of 52,000 Hajj slots by Saudi Arabia. In that shocking judgment of the Allahabad High Court of snapping of pajamas, grabbing of breasts, that judgment in which the Allahabad High Court had said did not amount to rape. Now the Supreme Court to resume its hearing in that particular judgment. The Supreme Court, to remember, had stayed that inhuman and insensitive judgment that, while coming down heavily on the judgment that was taken by the Allahabad High Court. India's crude import price falls below $70 per barrel, raising hopes for lower petrol and diesel rates. And Donald Trump considers this a pause as far as auto sector and auto tariffs are concerned. Car makers need more time as far as, making stuff in the United States is concerned, which is why he has decided to put a pause on those auto tariffs. And Trump hammers Harvard and freezes its funding. This is a $2.2 billion funding that has been frozen after the university defied the demands that were being made by the Trump administration. Let's get your top story, and this is in regard to Tamil Nadu's Chief Minister MK Stalin, who's expected to make an announcement regarding state autonomy in Tamil Nadu's assembly. Responding to that special mention of the two-language policy on the 25th of last month, Stalin had stated that he would soon make a declaration on the matter. He said, "I'm firm that we can protect the language and uplift Tamils only if we ensure state autonomy and uphold the rights of the state." To know more on this, we have my colleague Sam Daniel joining us. Sam, he has said that he'll be making an announcement soon, and that is perhaps expected today in the assembly.
That's right, Divya. We expect Chief Minister MK Stalin to make this announcement on state autonomy around 10 o'clock after the question hour is over. Recently, when there was a discussion on the two-language policy of Tamil Nadu versus the centre's three-language policy, Stalin on the floor of the House had spoken about this announcement on state autonomy, particularly to protect Tamil language in the state. He had said, "I'm firm that we can protect the Tamil language and uplift Tamils only if we ensure state autonomy and uphold the rights of states. I will soon come out with an announcement for this purpose," he had said. DMK has always been a strong advocate for state autonomy and federalism right from the days of Annadurai and later the tenures of Stalin's dad, Karunanidhi, Divya. In fact, there was a committee formed, the Raj Mannar Committee, which had given a series of recommendations, particularly to achieve state autonomy, including the center-state relations and what they call as cooperative federalism. It's in this context we expect an announcement by MK Stalin to give shape, particularly amid the perceived threat in their view to the Tamil Nadu's two-language policy, Divya.
Sam, stay with us for our next story as well. And of course, this is in regard to the governor wrapping the government of MK Stalin and of course locking horns yet again. We're talking about the comments that were made in regard to the governor saying that he was pained as far as the plight of the scheduled caste is concerned in the state of Tamil Nadu. He's gone on to say that social justice is frequently spoken about while addressing that function. This was in order to pay a tribute to B.R. Ambedkar at the Raj Bhavan on Monday. Take us through what is it that he really said.
That's right. It was a function celebrating Ambedkar's birthday at the Raj Bhavan, Divya. And in his long speech, R.N. Ravi, the Tamil Nadu governor, had taken on the ruling DMK, talking about the plight of Dalits in the state. There is oppression, there is discrimination, but what he says in Tamil Nadu is heartbreaking, as he calls it. He refers to incidents of Dalits not being allowed to wear slippers, scheduled caste community men beaten up for either riding a motorbike or for wearing slippers. And the ruling DMK has called these as utter lies by Governor Arun Ravi. The state higher education minister has said this is lie, and even going by the centre's data, 81% of atrocities against Dalits in India happen in 6 states run by or ruled by the BJP, including Uttar Pradesh, the governor's own Bihar and Rajasthan. And he says the governor is shedding crocodile tears in a state that is striving for equality and an egalitarian society. And the ruling DMK also points out that the governor has not learnt any lessons even after the strong blow given by the Supreme Court recently for delaying giving assent to bills and calling his action of referring the bills to the president arbitrary and illegal. And they also say the court has clearly said that the governor should play the role of a catalyst, a friend, philosopher and guide, and not somebody who disrupts. It's in this context they say the governor is doing or talking about things which are not in his domain, and he should not indulge in this kind of a thing. And the minister also says, where was Mr. Arun Ravi when Mr. Amit Shah, the Home Minister, had made those controversial remarks against Ambedkar recently?
Right, Sam, thank you so much for getting us all those details. Let's just get you some of the reactions coming in from the DMK.
Governor who was recently criticized by the Supreme Court heavily for failure of his actions and involving himself in unconstitutional work. The primary job of the governor is not being done by him, but he goes everywhere to secular education institutions and makes communal statements which is against the set principles of constitution. Now here he comes and speaks half truth and half lies to create an impression that Tamil Nadu is against this whole atmosphere of Tamil Nadu is against the Dalit, which is not this case. In fact, Tamil Nadu is one of the progressive state when it comes to caste discrimination, and we have minimized the issues, and any discrimination against Dalit is viewed seriously by this government. That is the tradition and the condition in Tamil Nadu. That being the case, governor has insulted the entire state by his statement.
In other news, Saudi Arabia has now cancelled 80% of India's private Hajj quota, and this move has come about abruptly. Now, the ruling and the opposition parties have come together to voice their concerns after the reported cancellation of 52,000 Hajj slots by Saudi Arabia for Indian pilgrims, and is urging the governments, particularly the NEA as well as the Prime Minister, to take up the matter with Saudi Arabia. This sudden decision is causing immense distress as far as pilgrims are concerned, urging the Ministry of External Affairs to take up that particular matter. Well, this is, it has of course got Omar Abdullah as well as Mehbooba Mufti asking the government to intervene. So is MK Stalin.
मैं तो गुजारिश करूंगा वज़ीर आज़म से, क्योंकि सऊदी अरेबिया इनके काफ़ी करीब है, कि उनसे गुजारिश करें। यह 52,000 लोगों का मसला है, सारी ज़िंदगी पैसा जमा करते हैं कि ये फरीज़ा पूरा कर सके। ज़िंदगी में हर एक मुसलमान को ये गर्ज है, उम्मीद है कि वहाँ के दीदार कर सके। अब वज़ीर आज़म और सऊदी अरेबिया तक है।
We need to understand that this quota of Hajj pilgrims for every country is fixed. We saw in January Kiran Rijiju, the Ministry of Minority Affairs, who was there. He signed an agreement with the government of Saudi Arabia, the Ministry of Hajj and Umrah there, that how the number of pilgrims from India and their quota has been increased to more than 170,000. Now, out of those 170,000 of the total Indian pilgrims who have to go to for Hajj, for pilgrimage, some of them, are around 80% of the pilgrimage or the pilgrims will be routed through the Hajj Committee of India, which is a government body, which is a government recognized body. Now, the rest of the 20% of the pilgrims have to go through the private Hajj operators or private organizers or the private groups who facilitate or who help the pilgrims reach Makkah and the other holy city of Medina to perform their Hajj there. But what has happened in the last 24 hours that the Ministry of Minority Affairs in India has issued a circular informing those private Hajj operators that the government of Saudi Arabia and the Ministry of Hajj and Umrah over there has cancelled their registration. It is partly because of what you are picking up as per the reports is that this is due to some payment dispute from the private Hajj operators there. And also, this is a recent development in the last 1 week. We have seen that how Saudi government is also curbing on getting the crowd over there to sort of minimize the stampede for the better crowd management. They are not issuing enough Umrah visas and different kind of tourist visas also for the people because the Hajj season is about to commence. So this is one of those measures they are taking for the crowd control management, but it's taking a toll on those pilgrims who had already paid their money to the private Hajj operators. Now they are in a limbo, and that is why you heard the leaders from Kashmir and as well as from Tamil Nadu, Chief Minister M.K. Stalin also raising it, and different leaders are now asking External Affairs Ministry as well as Prime Minister to intervene in the issue, as we know that the Prime Minister is also going to embark on a 2-day visit to Saudi Arabia later this month.
Right, thank you so much, Ghazali, for getting us those details. We also have Sam Daniel with us. Sam, last year about 1,40,000 Indians proceeded for Hajj according to the Government of India. This year that figure was supposed to be close to 1,75,000. Why is it that this quick decision, this abrupt decision has been taken by Saudi Arabia, and can the government really interfere in this matter? Take us through the reactions coming in as far as the M.K. Stalin government is concerned.
Divya, M.K. Stalin has urged Minister of External Affairs Jai Shankar to expedite talks with Saudi government and to resolve this issue, saying that there is distress among thousands of pilgrims as the private Hajj quota has been cut this time across India. Well, the government of Tamil Nadu has not given a clear reason where exactly the fault or trouble is. When we spoke to veterans in this particular space, they help us to understand that although 92,000 tickets or members were approved to go to Hajj through private quota, the private operators have failed to incorporate details online on that particular portal in time, because of which this rejection has taken place. So they blame it on kind of a lethargy by the private operators. Why, we don't know. But it's in this context, they say, unless the government intervenes from the central level, things cannot be rectified, and this could lead to disappointment and distress in that sense among the thousands of Hajj aspirant pilgrims who plan to take the private route for the Hajj.
Right, Sam, thank you so much for joining us. We will keep coming back to you for more on that story. Let's just switch tracks now to Karnataka, and there's going to be Karnataka caste survey, and that is where the focus is going to be as far as Deputy Chief Minister D.K. Shivkumar is concerned. He's going to be holding that key meeting today in order to meet with the MLAs, and let's just go across to my colleague Deepak, who's getting us all the details of this very crucial meeting coming up. Reports suggesting that 51% of the OBC quota is going to be discussed during this meeting in regard to a very important caste census decision that's going to be taken. Deepak.
Well, the entire issue stems from the fact that the leaked information from this survey report has always suggested, and now there is, of course, some pages that NDTV has also accessed, which indicates that the numbers of two communities, Vokkaligas and the Lingayats, their numbers are being shown as much lesser than what was projected earlier during the previous available survey. Now, what this essentially has done is put the two communities, their leaders, the legislators, the ministers in a spot of bother. Because up until now, it has been considered that one of the largest populations in Karnataka are Lingayats and Vokkaligas. Now, it's no longer the case. There are, of course, backward classes, the SC, STs, the other communities that come within the OBCs that are, looking at a larger number in terms of a population. So this is something that the two community leaders have found very distressing, and they've said that probably it has not been done scientifically, because many members of the community have complained that, during the survey that was conducted starting 2015, nobody visited their house to take this information. So where is this data really coming from is a question. Today, because on Thursday, the cabinet, of course, a special cabinet will be discussing just the caste survey to look into what this report really suggests and whether to implement it or not. Now you have DK Shivkumar, who's going to have a meeting with all the Vokaliga legislators. He comes from the Vokaliga community himself. There'll be about 21 legislators from the Vokaliga community who will all be meeting at his residence this evening at about 6. There is also, of course, going to be the Lingat Mahasabha, which is going to have the informal meeting today along with the office bearers. Tomorrow, the All India President Shamnur Shivshankarappa, who's a Congress legislator himself, along with his son, who's a minister, and several other Lingat leaders and ministers like Ishwar Khandre and the others will all possibly come together, and they'll also discuss, the effects of this caste survey on their community and how to really tackle it when it comes up for discussion in the cabinet.
Right, Deepak, of course, stay with us for our next story as well, and this is in regard to the Muda case and, of course, a clean sheet that was given to Siddaramaiah, and that is being questioned by the Enforcement Directorate in its plea against the Chief Minister of Karnataka, and that's going to be coming up in court today in regard to that clean sheet that was given by Lokayukta. Deepak, of course, what's really being said is only 30 questions were asked by Lokayukta before giving that clean sheet, and it is the ED that submitted an 8-page report urging the court to reject that clean sheet.
Yes, now the Enforcement Directorate filed a protest petition in the Special Court for Elected Representatives that questioned the B report that was given by the Lokayukta, saying that there is no evidence to prove any wrongdoing from the position of the Chief Minister in this particular case where sites were allocated to his wife. They've also said that they've submitted documents to the Lokayukta as well. Today, the matter, of course, is going to be adjudicated and orders is going to be passed. We'll really have to see whether there's any sort of trouble coming the way of the Karnataka Chief Minister.
Right, stay with us now. We have more news coming out of Karnataka this morning, and we're talking about a woman who was assaulted in public. She was brutally assaulted. That had sparked a complete outrage, and now 6 people have been arrested in the case. Take us through, Deepak, the details of that very shocking incident that came to light, which took place on the 9th of this month, in which men used sticks, clubs, and the intent was to kill this particular woman, and now all the men involved in that crime have been arrested.
Absolutely appalling case, to say the least. 6 people arrested, but right now there is a furor. There is a demand for stringent action against all of those involved in this heinous crime. The woman claims that her husband suspected her of having an illicit affair, went to the nearby mosque, complained to the committee there. They've then taken her to them gathering there around her. You can see harassing her, abusing her, beating her up with the wooden sticks, pipes, and more, and humiliating her in front of everyone. And what is even more shocking is that nobody comes to the rescue of this woman. They're all of them mute spectators. Right now, the police have taken up a case, like I mentioned, 6 people arrested after this incident came to the fore. But definitely, the incident has sent shockwaves across the country, and now we could expect some political ripples as well.
We're talking about this woman. She was called to the Jama Masjid on that particular afternoon on some pretext, and that is when this assault took place.
Well, now the FIR clearly points out that this incident happened on 7th, when the woman was suspected of having an affair. On the 9th, she was beaten up, and then the police have got hold of the video and then identified who the woman was. Based on her complaint, they've gone ahead and arrested these individuals. But at this point in time, politically as well, you could expect the BJP, which has been talking about crumbling law and order, crimes against women. This is yet another stark reminder that a lot needs to be done to protect women in the society. And definitely scenes like this are, quite shocking. And, probably a very, very stringent action is the only way that it can serve as a deterrent to people who want to indulge in such activities.
Right. Thank you so much, Deepak, for getting us all those details. Now, let's just get you the latest in regard to Karnataka again. There's a truckers' strike that started from late last night at about midnight. Truckers affiliated to the Federation of Karnataka State Lorry Owners and Agents Association begins their indefinite strike against the price hike when it comes to diesel prices and fuel prices and other issues that the association has gone ahead and flagged. The Federation is the biggest transport body in Karnataka with nearly 6 lakh trucks that have been enrolled. So this basically means that 6 lakh vehicles are off the roads, impacting the transport facilities that are being provided in the state of Karnataka. In other news, the Supreme Court will resume its hearing as far as the suo motu case with regards to an order by the Allahabad High Court. This was a judgment that came about on the 17th of March by the judge that had observed that dragging a minor, breaking the strings of her pajamas and grabbing her breasts before fleeing the place did not amount to murder. This did not amount to rape. Now, the top court had stayed that controversial part of the order while calling the observation insensitive and inhuman. In order to know more on this case and that judgment that came about from the Allahabad High Court, we have my colleague Nupur joining us. Nupur, of course, the Supreme Court had called these observations insensitive and inhuman and had stayed that order. Take us through, what is it that the Supreme Court had really said in regard to those very controversial remarks coming out of the Allahabad High Court? And this is not really the first time that we're hearing of such remarks.
Yes, in fact, the Supreme Court had taken a suo motu case against this particular Allahabad High Court order, which had triggered massive outrage across the country. If you remember, senior lawyers and in fact senior leaders from the parliament had in fact urged the top court to take a suo motu intervention in this case, where a minor was dragged below a culvert. Her breasts were grabbed by two accused, and the strings of her pajama were also broken up. Before public arrived to rescue the child, those two fled from that spot. Now the Allahabad High Court in its order, you remember, had in fact said that this whole preparatory stage will not amount to attempt to rape or rape on a minor. Now, several lawyers and several, in fact, public had questioned this particular observation of law by the Allahabad High Court and other future ramifications it can have and precedent it can set for other courts while dealing with POCSO cases like this. Now, the Supreme Court in the last hearing, where it had in fact taken a suo motu intervention, had come down heavily on the Allahabad High Court judge for making those observations. The Supreme Court had stayed these controversial observations of the High Court order while seeking a response from them. Now, it will be in fact very important to see that what the top court says today. Previously, the top court had called the judgment insensitive and had in fact said that it was inhuman on the part of judge to make these observations a part of his judgment, and had in fact also said that it was a well thought out judgment. It cannot be said that it was given in a rushed manner, and it appeared that they had in fact the judge had applied his mind, as he had reserved the verdict for quite long time. So there were many strong remarks from the Supreme Court judge, Justice B.R. Gavai, while hearing this case, and he had in fact went on to stay the controversial parts. Now today it will be important to see that what next step the Supreme Court takes with regard to this particular order. And also the mother of the victim has in fact moved the Supreme Court, and she had previously also sought an intervention from the top court to redact her name from the Allahabad High Court order. You can see how problematic the order was, that it even disclosed the victim's mother's identity. Just last week only the Supreme Court has directed the High Court Registry to redact her name from the order. Now today it will be very important to see that what the Supreme Court says on mother's further prayers, and also the suo motu case that it has taken, and if it issues any more directions to the Allahabad High Court.
Right, Nupur, of course, the victim's mother, like you mentioned, along with the organization named Justice, these are Just Rights for Children Alliance, challenging that ruling of the Allahabad High Court, which is being heard now by the Supreme Court. Thank you for joining us. Moving on now to news from Mumbai in regard to the terror attacks mastermind, Tahabur Rana's questioning that is carrying on. We're talking about interrogation that goes on for hours, 8 to 10 hours by the NIA in order to unravel a larger conspiracy behind the dreaded strikes. The NIA officials are ensuring his medical checks are in place and he's being allowed to meet with his lawyer. So far, the only demands that have been made is in regard to a pen as well as paper and a book of the Quran. Of course, that is something that he has demanded, but other than that, nothing else in regard to his diet or any particular food, nothing in that regard has been demanded by Rana. We have Shreya joining us. Shreya, of course, from what we were hearing initially is, even though the questioning continues while medical checks are in place, that he wasn't cooperating with the investigating officers. Take us through the major concerns that the NIA has at this point in time.
Well, as per sources, we know it's already been 5 days since he has been in NIA's custody, and he has not shown an iota of remorse. He has been calm and composed and did not throw any tantrums. His basic needs, such as a soft point pen, a notepad, a Quran, has been provided to him. Other than that, no special treatment is given to him. He is under, heavy security surveillance, CCTV, as well as human surveillance in the NIA headquarters. And NIA is continuously trying to extract more and more answers from him that has eluded justice for the last 16 years. But considering that he's a hardened terrorist, and because of his alleged links with Pakistan's ISI as well as the Lashkar-e-Taiba, it is becoming difficult, and it is going to be a time-taking process to extract more concrete evidence as to how the Pakistan state machinery has been linked with the top terror masterminds. And if we talk about the investigation, of course, the NIA has dug out the phone calls. Almost 200 phone calls were made by Tahavur Rana to David Headley, who is right now, serving his time in the US prison because of his role in the plot. 66 of those calls were made right before the November 2008 carnage, the Mumbai attack, which claimed the lives of innocent people, of almost 166 people who lost their lives because of that attack. So NIA is trying to explore and trying to get more clues from those phone calls, and is also trying to understand this mysterious man based in Dubai who Tahavur Rana met right before the attack. Who is this man? And as per sources, he's potentially linked to Dawood Ibrahim's D company. So how much information did he provide to Tahavur Rana, and what is the direct involvement of ISI in the Mumbai terror attack? Was it state sponsored, or were these just rogue elements? This is something that NIA is trying to dig out as much as possible. And as you were talking about the conspiracy, as per the court orders accessed by NDTV, a 12-page court order that goes on to say that, the conspiracy stretched beyond the city of Mumbai. Right before the Mumbai terror attacks, there were plans in the national capital as well, in places like the National Defense College, the India Gate, as well as some of the Jewish centers across India. Those were also targeted, but and these are certain elements that NIA is trying to focus on in terms of its investigation, and hopefully in the coming days we will get more concrete information and evidence as to in terms of his role in the 26/11 attack. Back to you.
Right, thank you so much, Shreya, for getting us all those details. Let's just switch tracks now to the Delhi government that's set to hold a cabinet meeting in order to discuss the electric vehicle policy 2.0. The BJP government is likely to set a target of ensuring 95% of all vehicles registered in Delhi by 2027 are electric. And while that aim is now to increase it to 100% by 2030, the government's second phase of electric vehicle policy is expected to be enforced soon. And with that, about 20,000 new employment opportunities is what they're aiming for. And of course, ranging from running charging stations to also taking care of battery recycling. According to the draft in the coming time, we are expecting a lot of changes. We have Ishika joining us. Ishika, the new government, of course, has been taking the pollution problem very, very seriously. And they're saying that they're going to bring down the pollution when it comes to this particular winter itself. And they're not going to wait for the winter season to bring about changes. And that's starting now with, their policy as far as electric vehicles is concerned.
Well, yes, Divya, as you rightly pointed out, we have seen that vehicular pollution has been one of the largest contributor to pollution here in the national capital. And that is why the EV policy 2.0 is in fact, the requirement of the hour. And that is why today the cabinet meeting of the Delhi government that has been called will be holding a discussion
over the draft that has been prepared for the Delhi EV Policy 2.0. Now, if we talk about, what are the benefits, rather, what does the EV policy say, then, certainly the emphasis is going to be given on the electrification of the public transport, that is the buses here. Now, in fact, the Delhi government has set a target of, electrification of all the 70 bus depots by 2027. And not just that, in fact, if we talk about, the incentives also that are going to be offered, well, for women who are purchasing a two-wheeler, the first 10,000 women will be getting an incentive